Roll call, please.
Alderman Sorrentino. Here. Alderman Messina.
Here.
Alderman Catalano.
Here.
Alderman Jacob.
Here.
Alderman Woods.
Here.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Here.
Alderman Eugene Wesley. Alderman Sismarski.
Here.
I declare a quorum. Next, I need a motion for approval of the minutes of Planning and Zoning building for the regular meeting of April 9th, 2015.
I make that motion.
Do I have a second? Any corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Opposed? No. Next, report and recommendation for overhead doors, proposed text amendment. That is my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I guess, Mr. Page, you want to take the lead on that one? Got any questions?
Yeah, sure. This is an item that my understanding started back in January of this year at the Streetscape Committee. And I think the intent was to clarify the ordinance as it stands right now, the Unified Development Ordinance. And I think the proposal was to define service entry and the street-facing facade of the Unified Development Ordinance. So I think that was the clarification. In your packets, you have a map of the areas that would possibly be affected by the proposed text amendment. That's the colored map in your packet. Just want to make clear that the staff report back from the CDC meeting in March did clarify this would just be for new buildings, not existing buildings. So really what we're looking at is an area that would be affected mainly in the industrial park in red, a couple of areas potentially on Irving Park Road. So really the reason this is on the agenda to get some direction from the committees to what direction the committee wants to go in on this.
Any questions? Mr. Roy Wesley, Alderman?
This is along Wooddale Road and Irving Park, mostly, correct?
Mostly correct.
Okay. Say there's a building that wants to subdivide next to the Historic Society, as an example. You got an industrial building there, and they want to subdivide, so they need another door in the front, possibly. So what does that mean? Does it mean they can't put it in?
If it was a new building, which it sounds like it would be, the service door under the proposed definition would not be allowed to face the street. I think the term is street-facing facade. So depending on how many streets the building would face, correct.
It's not a new building.
If it's
Say it's an existing building that's there,
if it's an existing building,
50,000 square feet.
okay.
Say they want to subdivide that. You have a business in the back, and you have a business in the front. It's not a new building, but it's new business.
If it's a new building, the way that the staff report was drafted March 16th, 2015, by my predecessor, that it would not apply to new construction. And that's exactly how it's defined. So sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm not understanding it. You keep going back to new building. This is not a new building. This building is up already.
If it's an existing building, my understanding from the staff report, it would not apply.
So they would be able to do it.
If it's correct, if it's an existing building.
Okay. Even though it's subdivided.
That's my interpretation of a memo written by someone else, yes, correct.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Randy Messina, Alderman.
Sure. Hey, Mr. Cage, so you talked about new construction. in reading this, it could apply to existing buildings as well, right?
Only if there was, God forbid, an accident of some sort, if a building was destroyed 50% or above. Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Alderman Woods?
Thank you. I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're saying, so for me, it's simple, is the door allowed to be put in on this street-facing facade?
On a new building, no. On an existing building,
So if there's a building existing, you can go cut a door in that building, and that's okay, but if you built a new building and wanted the door there, you can't have it. I don't understand how that is inequitable
Well,
thing.
I'll read out the section of the staff report dated March 16th, 2015, by my predecessor in the staff report. Note, any changes to the code would only apply to new construction. For any existing buildings, these changes would only take effect in the event of a non-conforming building is damaged or destroyed, as Alderman Messina's comment or question, to the extent of more than 50% of the cost of its replacement.
Right, but I read that to mean that if that building or establishment already had a door, because it doesn't make sense to me, you can cut a door into an old building and create a new situation, but you can't do it on a new building, because they're really the same thing. But where it would be allowed or grandfathered, other than if it was impacted, destroyed, or burnt beyond 50% of its original value, would be an existing condition, i.e., gas stations and all the other ones that are there. So, and just to clarify, that's where this came up. So we were looking and we read and said, okay, you can't do that. I go, well, that's not what the code says. And then we chose to add some clarity to it and go, is it, and this is the reason we're looking for clarity, because of the different situations that could be created. So the original question was, does the existing code allow for overhead doors to be placed on buildings in the front-facing facade in our downtown business district? And some people were saying yes, some people were saying no, and that's when we went to move forward, to clarify.
Yeah, kind of to get to what Alderman Woods is saying here, I think why we're here tonight is to decide what you want it to be. There's some language in there that particularly may not be clear, so we're seeking direction on how we want to move forward. How do you want it to be? That's, I think, why we're here, correct, Alderman Woods?
Yeah.
Mayor?
Existing building or not, if you have Irving Park, Wooddale Road, whatever, you cut in a door, you're gonna have semis backing in right off of Wooddale Road, you're gonna stop traffic or whatnot. That's one of the things we're looking at when we started with this thing, is to avoid this kind of stuff, especially since we're trying all the beautification, trees, upgrades, master plan, everything. But in the case of an existing building, if it doesn't have the door on Wooddale Road, they could easily put it on the side, correct?
Correct.
Be the same thing, one door
Correct.
here or a door there.
I think, my opinion is that really this comes to play with, the clear-cut answer is if it's an existing building, it's not affected. If it's a new building, you can't put the garage or overhead door on a street facing facade. I think some of the cases we're discussing are kind of like the gray area in between, which I believe was the intent why this was initiated in the first place.
Well, okay, existing building is there. Whatever's there is there, that's existing.
Grandfather, correct.
So if somebody wants to do something else, they can definitely put the door on the side
Absolutely.
and doesn't have to, all we're trying to do is get rid of the doors, big garage door openings on on the main roads.
On the main street
So-
facade, correct.
So the way it's written, then really it's not exactly correct. If we're trying to avoid any more, another building trying to come in on, that's by the old household building. So they want to put up, let's say, a warehouse.
Mhm.
They can put up doors on Wooddale Road. If they tear it down, that's not existing, they have to put the doors in the back, right?
Correct,
We'd only get frontage of a nice-looking building or whatever.
correct.
That's the intent.
Yeah.
That's why we brought it forward. We want to make sure that everything is clear cut.
I mean, my interpretation of the code as it exists, if a new building came in, would we allow them to put an overhead door, garage door on the front of the building? Absolutely not. And the code reflects that. My understanding is that when this, and some people have some more information on this than I do, because I wasn't here, my understanding was that the intent was to make the ordinance clearer to reflect that. But the way I read it right now, with the definitions as they exist, if a developer came in, a new building, whether it's on Wooddale Road in the industrial park, and they wanted an overhead door facing on the main facade, facing the street, it would not be permitted.
Go ahead.
So, but basically, if we're not going to let a new building do it, we're going to let somebody else come in and put a garage door on an existing building. Somebody buys a building and wants to change it for some reason, he can do whatever he wants, put a garage door there. It should be cut and dry. No garage doors on the main streets. Put it on the side, and we're done. I mean, you can still put as many doors you want on the side.
Correct.
Because you're not going to tell them, no, you can only put one, but two or three, right?
Correct.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, going back to your, again, the interpretation, I think is where I am lost or disagree. So an existing condition where there's a garage door would be grandfathered in. An existing building wouldn't have any greater right to add the door than would a new one. And that doesn't make sense, because all I'd have to do is build the building, wait a year, tell you it's an existing building and apply for a new permit, and cut the door in.
Well,
I mean, that's kind of counterproductive to the ordinance.
I think if we have a situation where we have an existing building and someone's trying to get around the code, that's probably going to be a question for the attorney, and I think he would probably agree with you, Alderman Woods.
But that's why we're here, so that we could lend some language, and it's not so much that we want to 100% eliminate it, because I think there's issues where some screening, distance off the front of the street, all those things matter. I can't take into account every construction scenario that would happen, but I don't think it has to be an absolute no, but I think that there has to be a sliding scale of distance from street, some other things, maybe aesthetic issues with some screening and stuff like that. That's why I brought it in. It's not a simple, yes, no answer. As you can tell, there's people up here that, there's scenarios that are in play. And I just want to address it. I just want the playing field to be even. If they're allowed, then they're allowed. Let's just do it, correctly.
Mr. Murmas?
From the discussion tonight, I would advise that we probably go back, we work with the city attorney. We know what the council wants already. Obviously, the grandfathered in one's grandfathered in. Like Alderman Woods said, just because you're a business, that doesn't mean you're grandfathered in with the ability to put in a garage. So I think, like Mr. Cage said, we go back, make the code more clear, and then perhaps have some type of language in there for variance or whatnot, or what conditions may be applicable if you are an existing business and want to apply to get a front garage, perhaps.
Right.
So I think we would have to come back with the potential language, but I think the direction is pretty clear. So we're not really making any formal approvals tonight other than getting the direction to get the language back to you guys, and then we'll go from there, in my opinion.
Alderman Sisamovsky?
Yeah, the language is pretty clear, but even if you're an existing building, you still don't have the right to put a garage door facing the key facade side of Wooddale Road or Irving Park Road, is the way it should read, correct?
Right.
Like I stated, if the language is not clear, we would make it clear because it's clear that your intent is that.
Right.
Alderman Eugene Wesley.
Eugene.
Right.
Wow. Would, Richard's Auto Care catches on fire, loses 50%. They have to rebuild. They don't have no room on the side. So are you saying we're gonna knock them out of business if they wanna rebuild? Because they got garage doors in the front. So by your code, what you're saying here, how I'm interpreting, they're out of business.
I-
So that's number one. Number two, many years ago, developers built 50, 60,000 square foot buildings because they had employees to fill those buildings. They had companies to come into those buildings. In today's market, everyone's downsizing, so they need smaller spaces. So instead of a business doing 50,000 square feet or 60,000 square feet, they're doing 25,000 square feet, which in return, you could have a 50,000 square foot building divided into 3 businesses. But again, they need warehouse, they need trucks to come in too. So again, we're possibly hurting businesses to come in if they have a building there already. Jeff, you mentioned the clarification. What is the clarification? I'm not getting it. So, next to Historic Society, would they be able to put in a garage door there if they split that building there, or not?
On the side.
Not facing the front.
I mean, what is clarification? That is existing building.
Okay, we'll take one more question.
Well,
Facing
can
And
I
then-
can I get an answer?
Mr. Murs?
As we've stated a couple times, it's clear that you want existing businesses with an existing garage, obviously that's okay. Existing businesses not with a garage, that seems to be wanted to be not okay unless there's some type of variance you can apply for with whatever variables are in play for the hardship or whatever. So it's pretty clear that it's not
Okay.
automatically approved, no.
Okay.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, to address those concerns, that's why we were looking at that. There might be a sliding scale, height of door distance versus the distance off the street. An 8-foot door is less offensive than a 16-foot door. And an 8-foot door might be allowed 8 feet off the street. A 16-foot door might have to be 16 or 20 feet off the street, because there's a lot of different scenarios, so that we avoid some of the scenarios that Alderman Wesley brought up, if that particular shop were to burn down. So we're not to try to run them out, but we're trying to add clarity and consistency to what the code says, and that was absent, and that's the intent.
So my motion will be to send it back to Plan and Zoning to clarify.
Come next week.
That is your committee.
Well, send it back to, right. Mr. Members?
No, I don't think it can come next week. We need a little bit more time on that.
To craft some language.
Yeah, give me some time.
You gotta talk to the attorney.
Oh, that's why.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking if the attorney can get something ready for next week, but the manager and Mr. Cage seem to think not, then it would go to the next planning and zoning meeting.
Well, I think what we're hearing tonight is there's some gray area in between. You know, we've talked about some, the 50% or greater if a building is destroyed. We've heard some comments about a building being subdivided. These are all areas that I think we need to discuss with the city attorney, so that we're all on the same page.
Yes.
So those, you've clearly got the black and white areas between the existing building and the new building, but I think there's some gray areas, and that's what we need to look into.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Right, and some of these buildings, They were talking about 50,000 square feet, split them in half. They have some dock doors, might need more dock doors possibly, but the way it's gonna be configured, they can easily put it in through the side and leave the facade in front as is, looking nice,
Right.
instead of having a garage door right there.
Correct.
And same thing, Alderman Woods brought up, so if we let that new warehouse come in 2 years, he's an existing building, he can come in and tell us he wants a garage door. Well, he's an existing building.
I mean,
That, you know, that's kind of,
That's why we have the variance process.
yeah, that's,
So if we clarify the gray area,
but, you know, naturally, we would tell those guys we want the doors in the back, no garage doors in the front. That's what they would do, but being an existing building, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, they decide they want to unload from both sides, they can just come in and do it.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't look good.
if it's not facing the street, correct. If it is facing the street and, you know, I mean, there's a lot of properties out there that don't just have one street, you know, that they face. So there's two, and there's some properties
Right,
that
but
have
the
two
side
streets.
street, hey, you know, I mean, you can't eliminate them. They got to be able to put a garage door on the side street.
Correct, but, you know, I think this goes back to the point that Alderman Woods was making, you know, with the clarification, is that, and there's some language in the memorandum that, you know, I think it was to make it clearer what is the main street-facing facade, because there's a lot of buildings out there, quite frankly, that face two streets. Now, we all have our opinions on what we think is the main facade, but legally we have to define that. So I think that's part of the discussion as well.
Alderman Sismarski.
Yeah, I think your language needs to change from warehousing to service centers, could be, obviously, because the Jiffy Pro or whatever, Jiffy Lube and Riches and service centers are all different than warehouses. They're not warehouses, they're covered garages for vehicles to be repaired.
Mr. Murmas?
One item of note that may be helpful, I do have Attorney Bond coming to the June 11th committee meeting, just because there's some topics that need some legal that night, annexation plan and whatnot. So perhaps, probably have it ready in time for June 11th, PZB. That way he'll be here, so maybe we can move swifter with him in attendance too. So he's gonna be here on the 11th anyway, so we'll try to plan for bringing it back on the 11th.
So we'll table it at this point?
Motion to table.
Motion to table it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so next is items to consider for future meetings. Annexation plan that's coming up June 11th. Next is additional ornamental signage bid, July 9th. And also dumpster enclosures, that's coming up July 9th. Any other items to be considered? Then I need a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
The Public Health, Safety, and Judiciary Committee called to order. Let the minutes reflect that the same members are present. I need a motion for approval of the minutes of the meeting of April 23rd, 2015.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So passed. Next item on the agenda here is the report and recommendation. Chief Vesta will discuss our approval of upgrades to the police department's firing range.
Thank you, sir. The memo you have before you tonight, we have a three-person firing range in the back, in the annex. Back in 2011, when we did some upgrades to allow us to shoot our rifle ranges on there, we also identified that at some point we're gonna have to replace the computer system and the targeting system that's back there. To kind of split up the costs, we said we could hold off a little bit longer in upgrading that system, but we're kind of at the point now that we do need to upgrade it. The last time we had someone come out and repair it. They were barely able to scrape together some parts to get it going, and as you can see from the picture, the Electronic 2000 is over 20 years old. So what we're looking to do is go through Meggitt Systems, and they were formerly Detroit Armor that actually built our range, and they offer a system that's a computerized targeting system that's fully programmable and customizable, and then that's the computer system that controls it, and then the targets are all remote controlled to allow for a number of different types of shooting programs that we do. Each year we do 5 different types of shoots just with our handguns alone, state courses, off-duty courses, night shoots, shoot, don't shoot, judgmental firing situations, movement situations, and in addition, we do our shotgun and our rifle training out there. So the targeting system that we're looking to get came in about $2,000 under the budget, but we're confident with this company. They did the equipment upgrades to allow us that changed our bullet trap out there, and we'd like to go to them for installation of this system, which has been used throughout the country. Thanks.
Alderman Jacob?
Chief Vesta, under the important notes and assumption, it talks about, item number 3 talks about if there's any issues, AC wiring, AC electrical. Do we foresee any issues? Because it sounds like that they would not do anything. If there is, we'd have to have another contractor do that.
No, I don't see any. If there is, we would look to probably do any contingencies out of the building maintenance fund. But this company has been out. They're the ones that, they've viewed our site. It's not just a blank demo that they say, yeah, we can do it. They've been out here. They also did the upgrades to the equipment. So if anything, I would say it would probably be a very small contingency, and I guess there's always that chance. But they didn't identify anything. I think this is just a standard agreement that they have to put it in, that obviously they're not gonna come in and rewire our building if there is new wiring that's needed, but I don't foresee that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Messina?
Chief Vesta, how many of our local communities have firing ranges as well?
It's limited. Some towns share ranges. We've shared in the past with Itasca, and then to recoup our costs, they were able to find someone that was giving it to them at a little bit cheaper rate. So you do have some towns that share. The only local outdoor range for long-range shooting is we go out to St. Charles once a year and do some of that too. So I don't have the exact number of how many are in the area, but a lot of towns will share resources, like Itasca and Roselle share together, so.
Go ahead.
Have we thought about that, if we're gonna spend the money to upgrade, to potentially send that out there as a way to, like a revenue generating opportunity for the city?
We could certainly look into that to see if anyone else is interested. I believe, I know Elk Grove has a large range themselves that they use. So I don't know what opportunities there would be out there, but we'd be open to it as long as there could be a price that we could agree upon and there was no additional liability for the city from other agencies using our area.
Go ahead.
If that were to happen, would we have the ability to expand on our current situation if we?
Not really. That room out there is really limited to 3-position firing range.
Okay.
How that building is, it was the old pool changing house.
Okay.
And so really, the size that we're at right now, 3-position range. That worked for us in the past with Itasca. It's just as we were having some costs with it, they found a better solution for them that wasn't gonna cost as much, so.
Thanks.
Alderman Wesley?
Chief, is $63,460, right?
Actually, 61,658. It was a little bit under budget.
I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Roll call? Okay.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes?
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky?
Yes.
Items to be considered at future meetings. The Front Street one-way, June 11th. the track guard, June 11th, and the BDA ordinance in July.
What is BDA?
The,
Chief?
the BDA is a bidirectional antenna, and what we're looking for, the countywide radio system, there's some limitations in new buildings, new construction, large construction projects. And so what we'd like to look to do is, and it's a kind of a countywide effort that's going on right now, is get agents or towns to pass ordinances that if certain types of structures are built, that if it doesn't have enough coverage for our police and fire radios inside, that part of their construction would include bidirectional antennas that would boost our power within. So we don't have to put those in, but the new business coming in would have to put those in. This isn't for small businesses, this is for large hotels that might be popping up, that you could have some coverage issues in a deep concrete building. So it's something I'd like to bring before the committee to talk about and see if there's some direction from council on.
Alderman Wood?
Yeah, Chief, so is this something we should look into? Because we got a 6-story all-concrete precast building. Would that be a prime suspect for what you're?
It's a possibility and something that's just come up recently as far as a discussion as to how to solve any connection issues. So obviously that project is already underway.
But I mean, but if it's a life safety thing and it's beneficial, and this is really something, maybe we could fast track this and then go and talk to them. I don't think that this would be an expensive thing, right? That for people to add, where it's like a repeater type.
It's a repeater type thing. You're talking a few $1,000s probably for a
Right.
building.
So, worst case scenario, you know, we could do it as a combined project and
Yeah, I think that would make sense, especially with the clientele that are gonna be in there. There's a likelihood of a
right,
lot
that's
of
why I
police
bring
and
it
fire
up. And I
calls,
think
so.
that if we, okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Need a motion for an adjournment?
The motion?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Okay, I'd like to call the Public Works Committee to order. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from April 23rd, 2015?
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Next is report and recommendation approval of partial payment request number 17 to William Brothers Construction for the WBCI for the Phase 1B North Wastewater Plant upgrades in the amount not to exceed $920,651.02. That is my motion.
Second.
Any questions? Can we get a roll call?
Alderman Sorrentino?
Here.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes,
Alderman Roy Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky?
Yes.
that passes.
Yes.
Next, professional services agreement between the City of Wooddale and Clark Environmental Mosquito Management for gypsy moth spraying in the amount not to exceed $41,648. That is my motion.
Second.
Questions? Mr. Smarsky?
That price include extra spray? Like we did like in the past?
Mr. York.
This is for gypsy moth and not mosquitoes. So this is just for gypsy moth spraying. So it's two.
Once, right?
It's two sprays. They come 7 to 14 days apart. But
There's no, I just wanna make sure there's no need for it coming out. I didn't mean mosquito.
No.
There's no need to come out for them again. They only come out twice.
yeah, they come out twice. They'll come out in June. They'll come back to back weeks probably and do them. Last year I think it was like a Friday, and then 10 days later they do the second spray. And this contract is for a 2-year contract. So the 41,000 is over a 2-year period.
Mr. York, how prevalent or pervasive is that? I thought that was kind of going away, the gypsy moth thing. Is it that?
Yeah, it's not extremely pervasive here, but we are still in the quarantine zone, and there's still a high risk with all the forest reserve areas around us. So.
Thank you. Roll call? Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Jacob.
Mr. York, do we typically do a 2-year contract on this, or?
Mr. York.
No, we do not typically. Clark has never offered a 2-year contract on this price. This year, they offered it for the first time. They were getting feedback from different municipalities, not from us, but from different municipalities stating that we do the same thing every year, we do the same pricing every year. You know, can you give us a 2-year contract so we can just do it once and then not have to worry about the next year. So what they did was they put this 2-year contract in. Now, if we want to not do it next year and we don't want to spray, we need to make that decision sometime probably in the fall of this year, and we can get out of it without any penalty. But we have had the same price since 2012, and it'll be the same price for next year as well. After that case, it may extend to a different pricing point.
Alderman Jacob.
Did they offer any discount for signing like a 2 or say even a 3-year agreement, or no?
No, there was no discounts offered.
Mr. Murmas.
Just for the residents watching at home, this is advertised on the reverse 911 system, just to notify everybody because there are helicopters flying overhead. So if you're listening at home, good time to sign up for reverse 911, so you know when and what the helicopters are.
So would you say at this time residents should keep their windows closed and stuff like that? Is there going to be some guidance with
It's also
that?
weather dependent too, is the spraying. That's why we put the notice out there, so
Okay.
people are aware.
Thank you. Alderman Catalano.
Also to keep their pets inside, I mean, so that'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not toxic. The chemical that is not toxic to animals or to humans, so it just would hopefully go on to the leaves and allow the caterpillars that eat it to not make it to the full gypsy moth stage.
Okay. No more questions? Can I get a roll call?
Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky?
Yes.
That passes. Next, Elizabeth Court Detention Basin Project. Who's going to take that? Mr. York.
Okay. Yes, about a month ago, we put out an RFP for the Elizabeth Court Detention Basin Project. We remember H.R. Green came and discussed the project. We decided on some ways that we would like for it to look and as such. So we sent it out to bid, our RFP, to our engineering firm for a design quote. And then ultimately we sent it out to bid. The bidder came back as Martam Construction. Their bid price was $398,000+. The original bid estimate was right around $158,000. So what we're asking for today is direction from the council from the committee to reject the bids. I've worked with H.R. Green's representatives. They have done some work going out and talking to the people that didn't send in bids, because we only got one bidder to bid this project. A lot of people were overstrapped for time, didn't have time to get the project to bid for us. So with that being said, we would ask that we reject the bid of the $398,000 and go out to rebid.
Mr. Murmas.
One other note of importance to consider, you'll notice that we had another rain garden project on the agenda, and the company that bid on the Elizabeth Court also, I believe, bid on the Potter Street one, I believe, and they were abnormally high on that one, I think, too. So we do expect by rebidding this that that price will be definitely lower than the Martan bid. So, because they were also high on the other bid, too, so.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion to reject the contracts and rebid.
Second.
Questions? Alderman Jacob?
Mr. York, was there anything in the bid specs that it was so high compared to what the engineers had estimated?
Not exactly. When I talked to the Martan people afterwards, because Martam is also the company that won the Ward 2 Phase 2 road project, so we had a meeting with them later in that afternoon. I guess it was, the guy spoke candidly and said we really had no business bidding on this project, but we got the bid and, you know, they do it. I mean, they were extremely busy, so it was one of those, yeah, we'll do it, but we'll do it for, you know, $400,000 if you really want it done that bad. So it wasn't so much the bid, I think it was just the way that the bids came out and people just got busy and didn't get their stuff in on time, and then we miss out on bids.
Chairman,
Alderman Catalano.
we're still getting grant money on that project, right?
Mr. Mamers.
The Elizabeth Court one, yes, we're getting grant money, but remember the Potter Street one, we didn't get grant money. And for those new council members also, we did have a similar bidding situation with the city entrance signs where we had to rebid, and that turned into a success story, so we assume this will as well.
And
For this instance.
how much is the amount of the grant money?
Well, it was 23% of the original bid estimate. It was 37,000 some dollars.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Alderman
Messina.
Messina.
Hey, Matt, what do we see being different this time? I mean, I'm all for going out and rebidding, but what's different this time that we think will change?
Well, hopefully we'll get a lot more people to bid on it, for one, and already talking to the representatives from HR Green, that was our project manager leading up to this project. He's already reached out to a lot of companies that bid on the other project, on the Potter Street project, reached out to them and, you know, starting to drum up a little bit of support and letting people know, you know, kind of get them thinking about, as soon as we get this out, you know, you guys got to get this back to us. So I think just getting people the understanding of what the project is and getting it out to them sooner than later. Then you always send it out to a few people, but a lot of people just come in and they may get the bid spec, you know, maybe a day or 2 days before the bid's due, and I'm sure the representatives from HR Green can attest to that. A lot of people pick up their bids at the last minute. Sometimes you even see them scribbling out in the parking lot. You know, we're hopefully not going to have that happen, and get some more bids in.
Alderman Messina.
Is there an opportunity, and correct me if I'm wrong, to try to bundle this with the Potter Street project and send those both out to bid? Since we're talking about the same players?
I wouldn't, just to be honest with you, because the one that we got back for Potter Street actually came in under budget.
Okay.
And I don't think you want to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater on that one and hope that we get still a good price on that one. Because, yeah, we may be able to bundle them together, may be able to get a good price, but what if you don't? Now we lose this really solid price on this other project.
Fair enough, thanks.
Mayor, please.
Yeah, and going back to what Jeff was saying, the guys who bid on this project, if you look at the next one, they were almost double what the winner was, so. That's all.
So, no more questions?
You made that
Right,
motion,
there is a motion and a second, so, all in favor of rejecting the bids and rebidding?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Next is an agreement with RJN Group, Inc. for sanitary sewer review and rehabilitation plan development in areas 2 and 3 of the I&I program in the amount not to exceed.
You skipped to E. Skip D
I
and E.
didn't want to do that one. Ward 1 stormwater project. Who's going to fill us in on that? Mr. York.
All right, last week we opened up RFPs for the Ward 1 stormwater project. Staff and the electeds that were on the committee's recommendation was to not do the project at this time, was to reassess that project due to, one was pricing. We thought the prices came in a little bit higher than we were hoping for. And also value of the project, also looking into some other options with maybe working with the Forest Preserve, doing a couple other different things. So at this time, once again, I'm going to ask that we do not accept any of the bids at this time, and you allow staff opportunity to go back and look at this project at a future date and time.
Well, first, I'll make a motion to reject the
Second.
mayor, police.
On the Forest Preserve, I actually spoke to a Forest Preserve president yesterday, and the next couple of weeks we'll be meeting. I'm gonna show them that area as well as another area and see if there's any opportunity. I know I spoke to our district commissioner a while ago, and she said that basically sometimes they can get money for wetland grants. There's a lot of opportunities there. Maybe they have some ideas. It's worth looking at.
Any other questions? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Next, contract between the City of Wooddale and Nettle Creek Nursery of Morris, Illinois for rehabilitation of the Potter Street Pond in an amount not to exceed $97,891. That is my motion.
Second.
Questions? Alderman Roy Wesley.
In a couple of moments here, we'll go into Finance Committee. We're gonna be talking about $2.4 million shortfall on Irving Park Road. We're gonna sit here and spend $97,891 before we start talking about that. Where this $2.4 million is not, we have to find funds for it. I'd like to come back to that after the Finance Committee.
So what's the Finance Committee gonna do?
Well, we gotta look at everything here. We got recommendations in the Finance Committee from staff, but who knows? We might have to put this off to the side for the time being until we find out what's going on in the Finance Committee. I'd like to make a recess your committee, go to the Finance Committee, go through that 2.4 million, and then come back to your committee.
Can't we discuss those options in this committee, if you have options?
Well, then you're going to open a Finance Committee at the same time?
Well, no, if we have a project on the floor and we're gonna discuss the project, and the project is over budget, and you're telling me that we have alternates or options, why can't we address those alternates or options now in this committee as opposed to, maybe you have a reason, I don't know, I'm just,
Well, we're going to take a
I'm-
vote
I'm
and spend
thinking we could do-
96,000. That's why.
so, if we go right to the, project that we're talking about and bypass these, that would be the same thing, yes?
I guess.
Well, I'm just trying to make it easier so that we're not going back and forth and get,
I
Lost.
understand what you're saying. I just don't want to put it on a
does
record here.
everybody else want to do that, go to the intersection project and vote on it? Talk about it, discuss it?
I'd feel more comfortable if we did.
Okay.
I mean, $2.4 million is a lot of money.
No, I agree 100%, I'm not disagreeing.
I don't want to sit here and, I want to make a reasonable decision here, and I'm not going to sit here and spend $97,000 for a pond when I got a road that needs to be done for 2.4. We got to look at all our options.
Mr. Murmas?
I don't, just procedurally, so it's not a disaster, can we just recess this meeting and jump into finance then?
Okay, I'll make a motion to recess.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll recess.
Okay, and, call the Finance and Administration Committee meeting to order. Let the minute taker note that the same people are here. I need a motion to approve the minutes of February 26, 2015.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Next item, report and recommendation of the safety improvement bid results, and I think we're going to let our finance director, Mr. Wilson, take this one. I guess maybe our city manager, Jeffrey Mervis.
It'll be a tag team, so you're correct. I'll just start out briefly. For everybody watching at home and the new council members, we all know that this project's been in the plans for probably over 12 years. It's gone through a couple different design scenarios. We did receive quite a bit of federal and state funding for this project, I think in excess of $11 million, free and clear. We were expecting the bids to come in for this project a little bit lower, obviously, than they did. So that leaves us with the shortfall referenced in the memo. And we need to figure out what we want to do. There's a couple options laid out in the memo. 3 options really. 1, rebid. 2, accept the bid. And 3, walk away. Obviously, staff's not recommending 3. The reason why 3 we think is totally out of the question is this is not only a safety improvement project, but lumped into this project is part of the Irving Park Road water main project. We know that water main's outdated, and we were able to use grant monies for new water main within the boundaries of the safety improvement project. So if we walk away from free money for part of the water main replacement. Number 2, we all know that the quiet zone has been important to the council. It's one of their initiatives. We did receive funding for a quiet zone as well, and part of the quiet zone is incorporated into this project. Not all of it, but part of it. The other part we did also receive grant funding for. A big component of the Ash Street crossing has a larger chunk of grant funding, but like I said, this project does have some of the quiet zone money in there. So you have the quiet zone, you have the safety improvements, you have water main, you have a multitude of important issues in here. So I think what we could do is, first of all, decide if we want to rebid or not, and then there's some pros and cons to that we can go over. If we decide that we don't want to rebid, obviously we have to fund it, we have a shortfall. Brad and I can discuss some options with you, and you guys can kind of pick which flavor. And we also have HR Green here, the design engineers behind this project, and they can answer technical questions about the bidding process, the estimates, the discrepancy between the estimate and the actual bid. They can recommend their strategy as well for rebidding or not rebidding. So at this point, I mean, I can open it up for questions, or if Brad's got some stuff to say, but, and also one more point of clarity. With this being an IDOT-led project and an IDOT bidding, we're on their timetable. They want a decision from the city if we want to move forward with the low bidder. I would need consensus tonight to send them a letter tomorrow that we would or wouldn't want to move forward, and then we would officially ratify it next week at council. But they want some feedback from us by tomorrow morning, so.
Okay, I guess at this time, I'm going to open it up for questions. Alderman Sizmarsky.
I'm gonna make a motion not to rebid, to move forward and
Second.
have staff find items off the budget to supplement the shortfall.
Alderman Wesley.
As in the shortfall, you saying the things that are listed here, the cash on hands, Edgewood sidewalk, City Hall, is that what you're saying?
Window, well, you can go, you already have it.
Right. And if that's true, I mean, why can't we go back to the CPI? You know, there's roads that's been put in for 4 or 5 years on the CPI, and residents are waiting for roads, and you're taking 1.2 million from Ward 2 and putting it back another year. It's not fair to those residents of those roads being pushed back another year. You know, we did Ward 1, we did Royal Oaks, we did all those streets over there. Now, we're gonna put these residents back another year on Phase 3. You know, I think we should look at the CPI and look at those projects for the last 2 years that we just added in and maybe look at those projects, eliminating some of those, instead of a road that's $1.2 million, which been planned for 5, 6, 7 years down the way.
Mr. Murmas?
Yeah, just a couple things before we delve too deep into this. Maybe perhaps we don't have to tonight, but after the memo came out, I know the RFP committee met on a Ward 1 stormwater project, which is essentially, I think, almost the same dollars estimated as this Ward 2 street project that Alderman Wesley is referencing. So you could easily keep the Ward 2 street project in, since we're not, you just approved not doing the Ward 1 stormwater. That's what that $1 million was. Also, we came up with some ideas. Obviously, the CIP is filled with different projects and whatnot. So if the consensus is obvious that we don't want to rebid and we want to move forward and we want to give IDOT that direction tomorrow morning, we can talk, you can talk amongst yourselves, we can bring it back to committee, decide which projects we want to pick and choose from to move around at a future finance meeting, if you want to discuss it more and game plan more. But what we really need to do tonight for sure is decide if we want to accept a low bid or not. We can figure out what project we want to push off down the road. But tonight, the most important thing is make a decision on the 3 options laid out, and you can ponder, like I said, we just had a change tonight, you can ponder the other details later.
Alderman Wesley, you have something else?
In return of that, $2.4 million, where did we go wrong on this, on estimating? I mean, was it the state? Was it H.R. Green? Was it the county? I don't know.
Mr. Murmas?
Yeah, and that's why the engineers are here to answer that question. But the one thing, keep in mind, even if the estimate was $2.4 million higher, you only had X amount of grant dollars, you were still paying $2.4 million. You just would have known a couple months before. So don't make the mistake of thinking you weren't paying the $2.4 million.
I'm not saying if we weren't paid, I'm just saying,
So, I mean, I'll let H.R. Green answer that
it
question.
just seems like it's just,
We'd still have to pay.
it just seems like it's just, here, we're short, boom.
Okay. Well, seeing that we do have H.R. Green here, would one of them like to speak and maybe answer Alderman Wesley's question?
Flip a coin.
Nobody wants,
Let Ron take it.
nobody wants the hot seat.
He's used to it.
Yeah. Ron Crawl, HR Green. To answer your question, Mr. Wesley, Alderman Wesley, basically when we do cost estimates, you take actual bid tabs from previous projects. So you get unit cost, and then you apply them to your project and your quantities, and you develop cost. That was done. This project, the last estimate was probably done in October of 2014. And the prices on various materials were suppressed to where they are now with the workload and the capacity of the contractors in this area. That is basically what drove up the cost.
Okay.
Okay. Mayor Police, you had?
Yeah. Basically, like the manager said, we really needed to move forward with pushing this project forward. I'm all for it. I know we're discussing the 2.4 million, but don't forget, right after this one, we're gonna talk about the Irving Park water main. It's another $3 million that's gonna get added, that's in the unfunded part of our CIP. I did some quick, you'll get your chance.
I just got excited, so.
I've just been going over the CIP. So basically, like the manager said, the 1.1 from stormwater in Ward 1, that's one of the projects. The City Hall windows, they can be pushed back. There's a water tower that we have to improve next year. That's $1.5 million. Now, if the council chooses to paint, that's about $400,000, you'll save 1.1. Now, staff will tell you, we really need that one, we need that wonderful new tower. Well, the clock tower's on my list, don't worry about it. It's there. It's the next one.
It's always on Roy's.
It's the next one.
We'll let the mayor
We
continue.
could do the 400,000 and save $1.1 million on the water tower. And to the new alderman, you don't have the booklet. I'm sure the manager can get you a booklet, and it's great reading. You can see what kind of shape the tower is in. That's $1.1 million. Alderman Wesley's clock tower that he loves so much is $600,000. And then the Ward 2 streets. I understand, like the alderman said, it's unfair. Those streets have been unfunded for a long time. We moved all 4 streets into the funded section. We've been trying to get them in there. That's almost, the 4 streets combined is about between $7 and $8 million. But these projects right here, basically, all the projects that actually Ward 2 streets are getting done this year, we have the second half of the 2 streets getting done this year. Those are getting done. All these other projects we would push back a year. Basically, you're pushing the whole CIP back 1 year to get Wooddale and Irving Park and the Irving Park water main done. Those projects total $5.13 million. Basically got most of the money. And there might be a couple other projects. And, you know, I don't want to get into the wards thing. You know, I had Brad pull something up on how the money's being spent in the wards past so many years, and you've been taken care of. Just so you're number 1 on the list. In money spent.
Look who I am.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. But I had Brad bring this up. You know, again, we can discuss these. We have strategic planning coming up and this summer where we can really pick and choose. But these projects right here, if we take those, you paid for both projects, we're done. All the other projects, any stormwater projects, ponds, everything could be done in the CIP. You know, you might tweak $100,000, $50,000, but we have all the money if you just move the CIP back 1 year.
I don't.
That's all.
Mr. Murmas?
Yeah, I would just like to say I love lively debate, but I would propose, like I said, the main priority of the night is deciding what you want to do with the bid. And then I would suggest we have a little impromptu, of course, publicly noticed workshop meeting where we talk a little bit about what projects we may want to push back or whatnot, and come up with a good game plan in a workshop session format. I think we'll get better discussion there. But obviously, we need to decide on the bid tonight for sure.
We got a motion.
I'm going to let somebody else. Alderman Messina had a question.
Yeah, this is for the city manager. One of the consequences, if we send this out for rebid, would be some of the other players, particularly Metra, we could be at risk of losing the quiet zone because everybody's on a timeline. Is that correct?
Wouldn't get constructed this year.
Peter.
Mr. Murmas?
Alderman Messina is correct in a way. We wouldn't lose the quiet zone per se. We could rebid and still, the quiet zone is still in the bid. What could happen, I think what you're alluding to, is it's been a little bit of a pain in the butt to get all the entities in line for this project. And I know that Metra, as part of this project, is doing the work. I think it's about $2 million of work internally. So they have crews ready to go. They don't bid that out, so they scheduled this to be done now. If we chose to rebid, you're relying on them to reschedule to be done, and if you remember, they couldn't even clear out their ditches for quite some time.
Great, thanks.
Alderman Catalano?
Also, I don't, for the residents in the 3rd Ward, that project, the flooding project's gonna stay the way it is. I just wanna make sure. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor?
Just so you know, Alderman Catalano, Ward 3, as far as spending dollars, is at the bottom of the list, so your ward should be last if we take anything out.
Thank you.
And I would like to make a comment here too. Instead of picking $2,500,000 projects, I mean, we have to look at the bigger projects, as the mayor had pointed out, than looking at the $97,000 projects. We need a lot of those projects to come up with 2.4 million. Mr. Wesley.
You know, 97,000 today could be 150,000 later on. Just keep in mind, whatever we're gonna cut here, the residents has to come first. Streets, flooding, those are coming first. You know, a rain garden or detention pond that people don't use, they use the streets, we gotta worry about the flooding. Those things those should be taken care of first, and other things need to be cut until we find out where this 2.4 million is. And we got a motion on the table to move forward. Fine, Jeff wanted to bring it back at another time, which is fine, and we need to talk about those projects. But whatever the residents need first is the roads and the flooding fix. That's what we need, and we need to cut these other things out.
I'm going to take a couple more questions, and then Alderman Messina.
In response to Alderman Roy Wesley's comment, excuse me, I'd like to say that Potter Street has kind of been that eyesore for Ward 1. So I kind of disagree in that, yes, I know it may not be fundamental, but a lot of those residents are dealing with a lot of other issues because of the way that area is zoned. And so I feel like this is a gimme, right? So they're dealing with people parking in front of their house, they're dealing with cars parking all times of night, they're dealing with so many issues, they're dealing with overflowing garbage, that I feel like this pond is probably the smallest little thing that we could offer them, especially because we don't have a quiet zone there, which they're one of the biggest people that feel that effect. So at least like to say that in their defense.
Mr. Mayor?
Before we get into debate on wards, we don't want to get into that debate. Really, do we want to move forward with this project? Well, either strategic planning, which is coming up soon, or some other meeting, we can have the debate on where the money comes from. You know, otherwise we're going to be going back and forth. And I can tell you, I could have Brad, I had him printed out so everybody can see what each ward has gotten over the past 8 years. You know, you want to be fair, you want to be straight, but let's not get into that. Do we want to do the project? I say we do the project. We got a motion and a second. I think we should move forward.
I'll just take one final question from Mr. Alderman Woods, and then we take a vote on this.
I was just gonna, in retrospect, just, if we could repeat what the motion was, because we may not have stated that correctly, so that everybody knows what we're voting on.
It was not to rebid the project and just move forward with it and find items off of the budget to supplement the shortfall.
So should we just make the motion to,
Need to not to exceed it.
Mr. Murmas? Oh,
Can we just rescind the previous motion and make a motion to concur with R.W. Dunneman as the low bidder and give the mayor authority to send the letter tomorrow that we concur with the low bidder for official approval on the May 21st council meeting?
I'll change my motion and make that my motion if the seconder agrees.
Does the seconder agree?
Oh,
To-
I'm a control freak.
to-
I agree then.
Alderman Sismarski, you're okay?
So you want to give the bid out to R.J. Dunneman right away, is what you're saying? All right, yes.
Okay. I think this is important. I think we should take a roll call on this.
Why is there a roll call? There's no money being
Alderman Sorrentino,
Yes.
to move forward.
Alderman Messina,
Yes.
Alderman Catalano,
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Alderman Woods,
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley,
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski.
Yes.
Mr. Murmas?
So just so everybody's clear, just clarify 2 points. Point number one, we'll have to send a letter tomorrow saying we concur with the low bid and want to move forward, which the attorney looked at already, and then we'll officially ratify on May 21st. And the other point of clarity, I would propose we have a little workshop session on all these funding things well in advance of strategic planning, which is later this summer. So I'll work with Brad and I'll work with the council and we'll get some dates, but I would advise we do it separate from strategic planning, so.
Next on the agenda, we have the Irving Park water main, and I think I will let Mr. Murmas talk again on that one.
Yeah, I mean, this has been an unfunded project in the CIP for quite some time now. We've had a recent history of breaks. It's been unfunded, quite honestly, because it's a heck of a lot of money. It seems to staff that now probably is a time to seriously consider doing this. What spurred this on is not only the increase in brakes, but also we have knowledge of IDOT coming through Irving Park Road and doing some resurfacing. So the last thing we want to do is have them come in and resurface and then go out and inconvenience the residents again and tear it up and put in new water main. We're also, as stated before, putting in new water main with the safety improvement project. So now we feel is a pretty good time to get this done. Additionally, you may have noticed we have $490,000 in extra grant money that would be totally usable for this project. So right there's $490,000. If we don't use that $490,000, now that's some $490,000 that I think we have to use Committe relatively soon. So basically, we would have to use that 490 either on, it's restricted to either the safety improvement project, but we would have had to rebid to use it for that, the Irving Park Road water main, or the clock tower. So I guess it's up to you guys what you want to use the $490,000 for. I think Alderman Wesley wants to use it for the clock tower, but I don't know what he is.
No, the Ferris wheel.
So I think Brad may have some other funding scenarios just to touch on tonight.
We'll let Alderman Sismarski has a question, then we'll go to Brad.
We could tie all this in together and do this all as one, correct? As you're saying, the IDOT coming through resurfacing, we can do the water main and get this intersection done at the same time. So I thought we were already talking about, what the mayor just said, by getting this 5.2 million, we were tying this water main in with that,
Between
correct?
this summer and next summer, because it's gonna take
Right.
that long.
Mr. Murmas?
The plan would be, obviously, the safety improvement component goes in, hopefully shovels in the ground in June. For IDOT's resurfacing of Irving Park Road, that's the whole reason we're talking about the water main tonight. We want to sync up their resurfacing of Irving Park Road with our water main project and get some economies of scale and perhaps make the project a little cheaper. But more importantly, not so much the price, but the inconvenience to everybody driving through Wooddale.
Their businesses.
So I don't know, Mr. Crawley, you have the date on IDOT's plan for resurfacing.
Yes, IDOT had originally intended, I had been paying attention with the York Road grade separation in Bensonville. They had also planned a resurfacing from York Road to Illinois 83, which was let in March. They had moved up the piece from 83 to Emerson, which would go through the main part of Wooddale here, to June of this year. Knowing that the intersection improvement was going this year with the contractor from Metro out there and the contractor from the city out there, I had recommended to the district engineer that we push that resurfacing off, also knowing that there was a potential for the water main to be redone. And IDOT willingly pushed that now to June of 2016.
We'll go to Mr. Wilson, and then we'll get some more questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Says, the mayor pointed out, and it was also in the memo, there is obviously an approximate $4 million cost associated with this project. So there's a couple different ideas or approaches as to the funding of this. Again, as we just did with the previous project, don't necessarily need to specifically solve that issue tonight, but at least need to get some general direction, and maybe, hit that at the same workshop as the grade separation monies. So there's really one, I guess, bigger decision tonight from the funding standpoint that we would need to know to let HR Green know, and that's if the city wants to pursue the potential of the IEPA loan, another 20-year IEPA loan for this, or if not, there's still certainly, funding available through a bank loan, competitive bid bond issue, or finding projects in the CIP to remove pushback to make up that shortfall. So I guess, I don't want to speak for Mr. Kroll, but I think if we want to go the IEPA route, they need to know sooner rather than later. And then if not, that gives us time then to go to that workshop and come up with the funding for it at that time.
Mayor, please.
Brad, I know the IEPA route has certain stipulations and whatnot. if we do it with the bank, you know, we can do a 10-year loan. I know we discussed this, and, you know, we can pay it off in 5. Personally, we already have to pay for the treatment plant. I really don't want to borrow any more money because the 1.9 million that we owe right now for the treatment plant could easily become 2.3 or 2.4 million. And naturally, that money comes out of the water fund. I know we're going to have that great discussion in a couple of weeks. I don't want to add to the debt when we can push projects back 1 year, basically. Everything that's in the CIP for this year is being done, except for that stormwater project that we're gonna hold off and look for other alternatives. If we borrow more, we're just gonna put ourselves in debt. We don't wanna do that. I don't wanna do that. Now, the council, if you guys wanna do that, that's your decision, of course, but I would say move projects back when we have that discussion 1 year, pay for it, and get it off the books.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, and so that's why I said, really, the decision tonight is if you want to go the IEPA route, because that's, 6 months to a year?
About a year if you go that route.
About a year to go that route, and so if they're doing it in June, I mean, we're pushing it pretty tight if it's even feasible at all. Or non-IEPA route, and then go back and look at all the options, look at the CIP. So I think that's, from just a planning standpoint, like I said, we'll go back and go through the CIP, other funding sources at that planning session, but tonight we need to know on the IEPA, you know, like pretty much tonight. And then, like I said, give us time to go back and go through the other funding options at that workshop.
Alderman Sizmarsky?
I'm gonna make a motion to do the latter of the two, not go the IUPA route and find projects and move the CIP back 1 year.
Second.
Mr. Wesley, you have a question?
Yeah, the whole CIP?
Not the whole CIP, projects in the CIP that we've talked about.
Again, we're not gonna move back roads and stuff like that, or flooding, or, I
Mr.
mean, it's
Mayor?
a discussion we're gonna have to have.
That's a discussion we're gonna have to have. I mean, I just laid those out there. Those totaled up $5.13 million. Again, we can have the discussion, move stuff around.
Well, I just wanna make it clear.
That's not written in stone. Nobody voted on it. Nobody made a decision. The manager's gonna call a meeting, a special meeting. We'll be there, and that's when we'll have that discussion.
I got one more question on these, on
Okay.
these grants.
Alderman Wesley?
You know, these grants for the improvements of the intersection for Irving Park, they were pledged by Pate and Lee and Henry Hyde from, and then Mayor Johnson was here at that time. Even though they were pledged at the federal level and state level, do we got the check? I know we're spending the funds and everything else. I mean, when Quinn left, he signed a grant for someone for $1 million, and he had to give the money back for remodeling their building, because something happened there, but I
Mr.
wanna make sure
Murmas?
that,
Yeah, sure, Alderman Wesley, I have an answer for you on that. I'd like to backtrack the previous question first and answer that. I think what we need to do tonight is obviously decide on if we're gonna do the IEPA route or not. And then I think the motion was made, and if we decide to not go the IEPA route, the next step would be we'd bring a design contract for the Irving Park Road water main. And we wanna get that started because we wanna make sure that we don't jeopardize the $490,000, because the $490,000 could be in jeopardy if we don't initiate. The money for the safety improvement project is separate grant, and that money has already been obligated, and we've already been receiving money, and we're in no jeopardy of losing that money.
And
We
the-
are in jeopardy of losing the $490,000.
the 490s coming from who?
Federal government, Congressman Roscom,
Okay.
before he
And
left our district.
that's pledged, or, well,
That's-
he's
that's-
there, so I'm not worried about
That's
it.
for us, but we better use it very soon.
Okay.
There's no other questions. I just want to get the motion repeated, and then let's take a roll call.
Okay, the motion was not to go the IEPA route and find projects to move the CIP back a year.
To see,
To
to
do the project.
do the projects, not, I don't wanna,
Not the whole CIP. pick-
that's what that says.
The water, do the water.
Is everyone clear on it?
I'm not voting on moving the CIP back a whole year. That you're
We
saying the
can
whole thing.
remove the reference to what we're moving and just approve the method of financing, that we'll do bank financing instead of the IEPA loan.
Okay. Does the, Alderman Sizmarsky, are you okay with that?
I agree with my publicist.
Okay. The seconder agrees. Roll call, please.
So what is the motion?
Alderman Sorrentino?
Not moving the CIP.
Can I hear the motion again, please? I'm a little confused right about now.
Okay, well, let's go back to the motion. We still have a couple people confused, so let's make sure everyone understands what we're voting on. Mr. Murmas?
Yeah, I think it would be simpler just to rescind the motion again and give staff direction to move forward with the Irving Park Road water main, but not use IEPA funding. And then, of course, we'll go and talk about the funding at the workshop, but we just needed to know that we're not using IEPA, that's all.
Is the motioner okay on that? Just
Yes.
second?
I concur.
With your,
I think we're all clear now. We'll take a roll call.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
yes,
Alderman Sizmarsky?
Yes.
Okay, next, items for, to be considered in the future, our favorite water rates, June 11th. Do I have anything else? Alderman Wesley?
Mr. City Manager, when are we gonna have this workshop now?
Mr. Murmas?
I don't have an answer for you. What I'll do is I'll talk to Mr. Wilson, and I'll probably give the council a couple different choices to pick from, and we'll settle on a date that everybody can attend sometime in the not-too-distant future, right?
Because I have concerns of spending more money as we're going along here.
No, that's
The
why
year.
I want to have it very soon.
Sooner than later.
Yeah, very
Okay.
soon.
Okay.
We got to figure out some dates that everybody can make it, so.
And you might get your.
If we have nothing else, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
I could reconvene the Public Works.
I'll take over.
I'd like to make a motion, a contract between the City of Wooddale and Nettle Creek Nursery of Morris, Illinois, for the rehabilitation of the Potter Street Pond in an amount not to exceed $97,891.
Make that motion.
Second.
Questions?
No, he's too new.
Alderman Catalano?
On that Potter project, is that rain garden included in that?
It's not rain garden.
Well,
Mr. York?
We didn't go the rain garden way.
oh, we didn't? Okay.
Yeah, there's different terminologies for rain gardens. This will be, it's gonna be a rock basin, and then there's gonna be pods of plantings throughout the rock basin.
It's a hybrid.
It's not what it looks like now, and it's not what we think of as a rain garden. It's a little bit of both.
Alderman Messina?
Hey, Matt, can I ask who's gonna maintain that moving forward so it doesn't fall into disaster mode again?
Mr. York?
Yeah, there's
Second.
I believe there's a 3-year contract to make sure that it establishes itself. Once that 3-year contract goes away, then that'll be the council's decision on who maintains it, whether it be Public Works or whether we contract that out to some outside entity.
Thanks.
No more questions. Can I get a roll call?
Alderman Sorrentino?
Abstain.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Abstain.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky?
Yes.
That passes. Next, an agreement with RJN Group, Inc. for the sanitary sewer review and rehabilitation plan development in areas 2 and 3 of the INI program in an amount not to exceed $13,790. Do I have a motion?
I make that motion.
Questions? Mayor, please.
Hey, Matt, looking at this Area 2 completed above ground, underground investigation, fiscal year 2016, and then rehab and repairs after design. But then Area 3 shows underground investigations completed and above ground is this year? Are they switching on how they're doing things? I'm a little confused.
Yeah, it's not really switching how they're doing things. Before I got here, Area 3 was televised, and Area 2, for some reason, was not televised. So they went ahead and did the underground investigations of Area 3, since they already had the videotapes. So they just went ahead and did that one, and then did the above-ground stuff in Area 2. Now we're just trying to clean it up right now.
All right,
So,
I just thought something was wrong.
no.
No more questions? Can I get a roll call vote?
Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
In the motion, was there a dollar amount not to succeed?
Yes. Not to exceed $13,790.
Okay, yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky?
Is
He
gone.
left.
He has left the building. That passes. Next is approval of a contract with Hancock Engineering to provide engineering services for the streets efficiency study in amount not to exceed $29,645. That is my motion.
Second.
Questions? Okay, can I get a roll call vote?
Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky? Who's not here?
That passes. Next, items to be considered at future meetings, vehicle purchases, June 11th. Request for proposal, Ward 3 Stormwater Design, June 11th. Phosphorus, June 11th. Contract award, Sidewalk Hemlock, June and July. Curb replacement strategy in July. Do I have any other? Alderman Sismarski.
Jeff, was that, the contract award for Hemlock, isn't that coincide with, wasn't it a bundle deal with Edgewood?
Mr. Murmas.
It was originally planned to be a bundle deal, but at a previous meeting, maybe about a month or two ago, the council direction was to make sure that Hemlock proceeds forward because that was the least complicated, because there was easements required for Edgewood. So we have sent out the letters provided by the city attorney to the residents on Edgewood, but the direction was not to jeopardize the Hemlock project, knowing that the Edgewood sidewalk would take a little longer to complete. So the goal is still to complete both, but Hemlock was directed by council to move forward on
I
its
just
own.
don't want to pay more for that Edgewood project if we don't get it bundled with it. I mean, they're still gonna give us the same price.
Well,
gonna go up for
it's
bids.
a separate, it would be a separate bid, so,
Separate project.
but we have money in the budget for the project, so.
Okay. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.